Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and develop a conversation around mentorship. So, one of the first things I think that is pretty challenging, and this was inspired actually from recruiting, is that some of the things that we do related to leadership, I think, are more abstract and they're less concrete than the things we do maybe on a skill level. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, on I don't know, something like, let's say, maybe content or something. You can pretty much create a piece of content. You have control over a lot of the factors. You have control over the composition of the photograph. You have control over even maybe how desirable that photograph will look to your end audience. But I think the thing with, let's say, people is that no matter what you do, you won't have necessarily as much control over people as you will over skills. Okay, just before I go on, I'd like to just double check to see if we have agreement there. All right, let's go over to Risky. Risky, how do you feel about that?
I agree, sir.
Okay, all right, let's go to Tendi. Tendi, how do you feel about that?
Yes, I agree, sir.
Okay, all right, let's go to Deba. Deba, how do you feel about that?
I'm sorry, I just joined in the middle of your sentence, so I don't really catch what you're saying.
Okay, so the idea is around that control leading is more abstract than, let's say, skill-based work, and there's less control over the results because you're dealing with people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And Alvin, would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, great. All right. So now that we know that we're dealing with people, then the other thing to really think about is this is an insight that we learned in revenue management and an insight that we learned from recruiting. If you're dealing with people, you know that despite whatever you do, there's going to be some risk. People don't always turn out the way we expect them to. So instead of actually working on things that you can not control, the first start, the first beginning, I think, of any leadership is to think about what you can control and then just work on those things. If there's things that you can't control, don't let them bother you too much because, hey, that's not really your choice. Okay, so I'd like to begin. I'll share my screen again. And can everyone see my screen? Yes? No? All right.
Yes, we can see it.
Because I only have a single screen today, so I can't see anybody if I tab away. Okay, so the idea is inspired from this. This is the prayer of serenity, and I found it pretty. The older that I get, the more I find it relevant to my life, and it's basically this. I mean, not all of us are religious, and it's not meant to be religious, but it's a pretty interesting prayer. So it says, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference." Now, early on in any leader's career, this part is actually the most confusing. It's like you feel responsible for people, you feel responsible for things, but maybe on retrospect, you look back and you realize, I should have spent more time working on the things I could actually change, and maybe not so much time worrying and being haunted by the things I couldn't change. Okay, so then hopefully through this discussion, we can all gain some wisdom and really arrive at the points at which um, we have wisdom, where we discover what are the things we can change. So the objective is simple. It's really taking the basis of mentoring and recruiting. Both are a form of risk management, right? So 50% of recruits won't work out. And it's very hard to determine which 50% that is. So we have to go in knowing that, let's say, whoever we lead, whoever we mentor, not everybody is going to turn out the way that we want. And that, I think, at least sets the expectation correct. So then the in order to become better, oh, sorry, I adapted this from recruitments, but in order to become better mentors, you should understand what you have full control over, what you have partial control over, and what you have no control over. And I think this is a good beginning. Okay, let me just bring you guys through something that we did actually for recruiting, and I believe some of you guys who came to ours class saw this discussion. So when it comes to recruiting, it was very similar, and I wanted to also kind of share and develop that first as an example, and then I can go into how we can adapt that example to mentorship as well. So the first thing to know about recruiting was something like this, right? So what were the factors that we can control, let's say, as recruiters? So on recruiters, we have a lot of control on certain elements. We have a lot of control on selection. We select candidates for phone screenings. We select candidates for video interviews. We select candidates for on-site interviews, and we offer the job interview to that. So if we have, let's say, a factor that we can control, that's great because then we can start creating KPIs for that. We can say, all right, if we have control on selection, then what is the KPI that determines how good we are at selection? So I was thinking like, okay, we could say, what is the hire to pass probation rate? So we hire 10 people and 80% of them pass to probation. That means we have an 80% selection rate, that we have an 80% pass rate on our selection. So that indicates that we're good. We're knowledgeable about what we do. And then we could also measure another ratio, maybe on like, let's say the probation to the first promotion point, right? So we can come up with a KPI. Then we can create the SLA, which is essentially what is the level that KPI should reach. In the previous example, I said, okay, maybe we have an 80% higher to pass probation rate, and then we have an SLA developed from that KPI. Okay, so that's an example of a factor that we can control, that's selection. And the second factor that we can control for recruiting is attraction. We have influence on how attractive we can be to a candidate, and that includes putting out job posts, that includes salary package, that includes advertising. So we have control on the attraction part. So then the KPI on that should be something related to, okay, how efficient are we at attracting? So we could say a KPI is maybe like a cost per hire. We spend this much money to get a hire. Is there a way to actually make that more efficient? And then that comes into an SLA. Maybe there should be a maximum cost per hire. We take the budget of all our advertising for the month, we divide it by the number of people we hire, and that gives us an idea of how much we're spending. And then we can set a target. We can say that, all right, the first 3 months, we can spend, let's say, 6 million per hire. But over a year, we should probably try to reduce that, become more efficient by 50% and maybe 3 million a hire. So anyways, that's the third factor that we control. And then this is also very important as a leader or as a mentor. Generally, in terms of leadership and mentoring, the most control you have over is timing. You control when you want to engage and how often you want to engage. So the candidates generally do not have control on timing. They don't have any control over when you want to schedule an interview with them. They don't have control over when your next follow up will be. So generally, for let's say in the case of recruiting, recruiters have control over the timing. Okay, all right. So let me go around double check. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, all right, great. So let's do this then. As an exercise, I'm going to open up the discussion and try to figure out what it is that we can then take from this and apply it to mentorship. What is it that we can sort of take away? So let's start with this. Let's go to Risky first. Risky, what sort of controls do you think a mentor has? What sort of are the ways that a mentor can control how they mentor?
I mean, in terms of like, let's say, for example, like time.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's talk about that timing. Tendi, would you agree with Risky there that timing is important for a mentor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and why do you think timing is important for a mentor, Tendi?
Because we can set and then we can set the timing to reach our target.
Okay, very good. So I would tend to agree. Let's go over to Alvin and Diba. Alvin, what do you think about timing for mentorship?
That may also gonna affect on our investment itself to train someone. Actually, how long we actually gonna spare our time with someone that we actually gonna mentor,
Okay,
and it's gonna lead also on the process of how long we gonna do the mentorship itself until the evaluation.
very good. Okay, in this dimension, timing, I meant more like when you choose to mentor somebody rather than how much time that you're actually going to spend. So we do have that too. Actually, that brings up another good point. So a mentor, let's say, for example, if we know already we have a time budget, we're going to spend time with this candidate, then we have another form of control. Let's go to Diva. Diva, besides timing, what would you imagine is, let's say, the mentor's second most strong control in mentorship?
Hmm. Perhaps the the approach, I think.
The approach, okay, very good. The advice and how you actually, your content, so to speak, right? How you
Yeah, like
actually, um, what sort of advice are you offering? Okay, so a mentor has, let's say, these two things. They have timing, and then they have the advice that they want to offer. So you, of course, as a mentor, can study more. You can try to understand better approaches. You can, take your experiences and share. Really good. There's one more control that a mentor has, and it's probably one of the most important ones. Does anybody want to care to guess what that one could be?
Mm, set an example.
Set an example. That I would say is related somewhat to content. That's related to, let's say, your influence and how. Oh, that's actually interesting. Wait, that's a little bit outside. Okay, all right. So a mentorship has personal behavior. Okay, all right. So we can control our personal behavior, and that does have some influence on the candidate. But it is not necessarily the strongest control risky if the candidate is not receptive or not visible to the your behavior. All right. So let's say, for example, if your work is invisible or harder to see, or there's just distance. Let's say, for example, Tendy's coaching somebody and mentoring somebody, but they're in Canggu all the time. He's in the Bukit. So then it becomes a little bit hard to control that transfer of information just by example. But okay, I think that's pretty good. One more thing, Tendy. What is, let's say, the next control that a mentor might have?
Mm, the training material.
Right, related to content, right? So let's write these things down so we kind of keep track of what we think, what we have. Okay, so let's go with the first one. We have control over the timing. We have control over, let's say, the material or the content, and we have control over our personal, let's say, our persona, right? Who we are and the persona that we give, and one more. Any one more? It's pretty important. Okay, selection, right? Not every person should be a good fit for. Okay, every mentor will be different, and every mentee will be different. And I think the relationship between mentor and mentee is somewhat like it's like friends, right? It is sort of like you have to choose them, and they have to choose you back, and then you have like a relationship. Oftentimes, it's not spoken. It's not like, hey, can you be my mentor? But you'll know it, right? I think you'll know it if somebody's receptive to your instruction. And if you're being mentored, you also will know it because it seems like somebody's investing more time into your development too. And it feels authentic and genuine. So, by no means are we obligated to mentor everybody. And I think that is important. And that creates, at least then, I think we need to create a gap so that people want to be mentored rather than people expect to be mentored. And that's important. Okay, let me actually discuss that with everyone. How do you guys feel about that idea? Is mentorship a privilege or is mentorship a right? Let's go to Diba.
a privilege or a right. Mm, I don't know, man. I'm seeing it as like almost a burden.
Okay. Well, no, this is actually from the mentee's perspective, right? From the person who's um,
Oh, I see what
getting
you're
getting
saying.
mentorship. So should they see mentorship as a privilege or as a right?
It should be a right.
A right. Okay. All right. Let's go to Alvin. Alvin, what do you think? Should a mentee approach mentorship as a privilege or a right?
My personal opinion, it's more on, as a right rather
A
than
right.
privilege. Actually.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Let's go over to Risky and Tendy. What do you guys think?
I think mentor is a obligation
To who?
to the mentee.
Okay. All right. Obligation. So the mentor is obligated to mentor the mentee.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And Tendy, what do you think?
Uh, it's right.
It's a right. Okay. All right. That's really interesting because I actually have a very different thought on that. Maybe it's a generational thing or maybe a cultural thing. Mentorship, wherever I have been from, was always a privilege. So let's say, for example, you're at a university class and you develop a good relationship with your professor. And then they, instead of, let's say, they kind of key you in onto special things. But in order to, let's say, get that position, the mentee has to step up then. Okay, so we have to actually, okay, going back to what Deepa was saying, let's pretend, well, not let's not pretend, let's go with this basis. If mentorship is an obligation, then where is the burden, Deepa?
The burden is uh, because you know that if you are mentoring someone, you might ended up like, even though I know that I want to mentor someone that will become something that will surpass us like what I've done,
Mhm.
but maybe the way that you mentor them sometimes, because it's the method that works for you, so you can be by accidentally training them to be like the next you, but that's not what you want. You want something that's better than you. So yeah, that was the one of the burden actually.
Okay, interesting challenge. All right, let's go to Alvin. Alvin, what do you think? Where's the burden? I think you were talking about it just earlier, right? About all the time, and then I think well, a few of us were talking about it. I forgot who said about the time, right? You would invest into a mentee. How do you feel about that?
Uh, the burden for me is not about the time. I think it's about more for me personally. I think it's more on the expectation from the mentee itself. Let's say there's a lot of factors that actually gonna affect on the process of mentoring, right? Either let's say the approach itself and the other thing. Sometimes I think for me personally, the burden is let's say between the mentor, the expectation. It is that's actually that gonna take a lot of time for us to gain that.
Okay. All right. This sounds similar to what Debo was saying about expectations. You know, like maybe the mentor wants to train the mentee in the same way that they've been trained, but maybe the mentee wants kind of something different. And this is also actually pretty interesting because I think all of us, well, we're almost all in, we're going to be in a generation gap pretty soon, right? Because most of the people who will be coming in, let's say as interns or as new people, will probably be in Gen Z now, right? Rather than in the millennial category. Okay, let's go over to Tendy and Risky. Uh, do you feel like mentorship is a burden?
No.
Okay, all right. And Risky, what about you?
I think mentorship is a burden. So.
Okay, right. Because what happens, say, let's say Tendy, if you spend hours and hours training somebody, and then you go like, this person doesn't get it, right? Or I feel like they have not necessarily deserved the time that I've put into their development. How do you cope with that feeling? Or have you had cases like that before?
Um, yeah, I just do my best from my side. Like if that person didn't get it or didn't want to for like learn, so it's up to them. Like if you want to grow, if not, yeah, that's depend on you. But I just try my best like from my side.
Ah, okay. All right. That's really good then. Okay, so we have to be, I think, distinct about what mentorship is and what, let's say, leadership is and what training is. So for me, mentorship is a little bit different than let's say standard leadership. The idea of mentorship is actually you're personally hoping that somebody else can, like what Deba said, can actually exceed you, can actually like do something in a way that's better than what you're doing. it's more of like a special relationship that you're going to have with somebody to personally like hand um, build them in this way. So this is what I want to get to. No mentorship is sustainable without selection because you cannot, let's say, expect to feel rewarded if you put out your best all the time and people don't receive it well. So if you do want to, let's say, develop a good mentee relationship, try to select the best people who would actually get along with you. And then that is a much more sustainable process. If you can have that relationship, then you see your mentees grow. You feel like, oh, okay, all right, this is worthwhile. I've put in like this much time, and they're helping me too. Now I can see also reinforcement of my own role. Then that is something that feels much better and far more productive of your time than selecting mentees that just don't have the same style or don't see things the same way as you. Okay, all right. So we have essentially now our factors. We have timing, we have the material, we have our own persona, and then we have the selection. So on timing, how would we create a KPI for timing? Oh, this is good, right? How would we create a KPI to understand if we are, let's say, timing our mentorship correctly? Welcome in, Rafik. Okay, all right. Over to Alvin. How would we create like a KPI to determine if we're timing correctly?
This is for the mentorship, right?
Yes, for mentorship.
How long? Few things that come in my mind. First, how long the mentee itself finishes the process of the mentorship, or let's say finish the assignment. Secondly, if we try to make an implication on a company, basically also using the promotion process. How long actually they pass the promotion
Okay,
process to reach the competency?
that's good actually. Okay, so it could be related to maybe like promotion pass rate, right? So if you are, let's say, a more effective mentor, then more people should actually pass the promotions, right? Okay. Do we have any other ideas there? Let's go to Tendi. Tendi, how would we evaluate timing for a mentor?
Um, the time that how much they they finish the key result or the action plan.
Wait, could you repeat that, Tendi? I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, for example, like uh, there are like a 4 key result, and then like in a month, how much they is it like a 15% already or
So milestone progression. But we're
yeah.
talking about, let's say, timing for the output. What kind of output are we talking about here? It's not necessarily their own key results. It would probably be somebody else's key results or somebody else's progression. So let's say, for example, just use an analogy. Let's say you're a farmer, right? So let's say you're a piece of corn. If you're a piece of corn, maybe your key result is to grow into a full bushel of corn. But if you're a farmer, corn farmer, it would probably be like how long it takes to actually create each stalk of corn or something like that. That's a weird analogy, but sorry, I couldn't think of anything better. Yeah, kind of tricky, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, it could be this. What about the average time to pass probation and the maybe it could be like let's say the average time to first promotion, right? Maybe that would indicate timing. So if let's say mentor has good timing, then they should be able to let's say in the most efficient way produce the key results of leadership. Right? People are being led and they're able to succeed. So think of it this way. Think of if you're a good teacher. If you're a good teacher, then like most of your students should be able to get good jobs after school, right? Or they should be able to pass your class, which is also kind of weird because you grade your own students too. So you're sort of you have an incentive to actually make it easier so you can pass more students. So that one can be a little bit tricky. But okay, let's take a look and try to understand how we control timing. Let's say if we're recruiting. So on recruiting, we can actually control timing. This is to use an analogy in recruiting so that we can understand a little bit more about mentorship. So on recruiting, we said that essentially the recruiter has control over the pace of the hiring process. We can reach out at any time to contact the candidate, to ask them to interview, to ask them to on-site trial. So we control the cadence of their process, and the KPI on that can be how fast can we hire somebody, and maybe the KPI is what is the median time to hire someone. So maybe let's say we hired I don't know, like Dominic in 13 days. We hired Cynthia in 90 days. We hired somebody else in 45 days. So we can say, okay, all right, the KPI is the time to hire, and then we can have an SLA there. We can say, all right, it should not take any more than the median time previously to hire. So we can say a 45-day SLA for time to hire. Okay, does that make sense? In that sense, in regards to how we can set a KPI from the timing and then develop an SLA from that. Okay, let's go to Risky over for that. What do you think of that process?
I do agree with Alvin, and yeah, I think it's the best way to measure is from the promotion
Okay.
time.
Okay. All right. And let's go over to Diva. Diva, what do you think?
Why are you laughing?
No, because I was thinking about
Before,
the
before, I,
context.
before I answer, you have to tell me why you're laughing.
Yeah. I was thinking about the context. Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is a bit tricky metrics though, because there are two variables here, right? There's the mentor and the mentee in this part, but uh, yeah, but I think it's still in terms of like talking about timing in terms of career path. Then yeah, the KPI would be like the time of promotion. But if like we're talking about like mentorship in the projects, could be the deliverable of the milestones.
There you go. Okay, really good. Okay, all right. So that's actually pretty good. Deliver milestones. And okay, what else? What else could be involved in this, in the timing?
Hmm, control over timing. Yeah. What are the other metrics besides timing?
Okay, the other metrics are the material,
Real persona
the persona, and then the selection.
selection. Yeah, I think that is what I can think of timing though,
Okay, all right.
so
So
far.
let's clarify also. Let's drill down into what we mean by timing, right? So in terms of mentorship, I think the mentor um, controls the cadence of development, right? So they can essentially control when to subscribe a training material. They can control when to review the performance of the mentee. They can essentially like control when are we going to prescribe something and when are we going to monitor that progression. So when to monitor. Okay. All right. Interesting. I also thought of another one, which is the ramp up time. So let's say, for example, somebody on online guest support is mentoring somebody new for online guest support. So let's say there's an SLA that we're trying to fulfill for each profile, and there's a certain type of growth that we've come to expect from each profile. So when we transfer it to a new person, there's going to be a ramp up time. There's going to be probably maybe a month or 2 months where the work is maybe unstable. Um, but then there should be a clear date when a handoff should happen, right? There should be a clear date like I don't need to actually look into this account anymore. The revenue progression will be at the same, let's say, relative levels as what the company is performing at. Could be for, let's say, content. The ramp up time could be I don't need to look at the production of this piece of content anymore. The SLA is being maintained at the same level it was when I was working on it. So we can measure essentially if the flame has been transferred over to the new party. Okay, all right, cool. And let's talk about material. How do we? What is the material actually? Let's delve into that. Tendi, what do you think the mentoring material is?
The mentoring material
Yeah.
is including like the first the SLA,
Okay.
the daily routine, like what the host will do. For
Yeah.
example, like the host, what is the daily routine of host, like covering reservation or something, or check the room or something. And then the material also how to operate the system, like
Okay.
the Uber or Toket or something.
Okay. So we got the SLAs, the daily routines, the operational standards. Okay. Let's go to Risky. Risky, what else is mentorship material? What else is like part of the material that we can rely on to mentor someone?
Mm, yeah, I think probably the same with Penny, sir.
All right. Okay. Let's keep on going. Let's keep on going. Let's go to Alvin. Alvin, what is some other mentoring materials that we have? Now, remember, materials can be just think of it as media, right? It can be video, it can be sound, it can be a conversation. What other mentoring materials do we have, Alvin?
This is for the definition or for the KPI. Sorry.
This is just for the controls. So it's a factor
Oh,
that we control as mentor. We control the material. So
form of communication,
yeah, sure. Okay. What kind of communication?
the platform itself
Okay.
for me.
What else?
Else. National as other regional standard communication. Not sure.
Okay, here let me open this up a little bit. Um, I would call these as standard ops, right? So this is essentially like PCI work, PCI stuff, and okay, so that goes into whatever our sort of our operating routines, right? SLAs, daily routines, and operational standards. And on communication, I think that there's two levels of communication here. There's definitely the written stuff, and don't forget, there's a lot of stuff all over the place, right? Or no, not maybe not written, maybe like documented, right? So these are things that are we've already created. So we have like Canva. We have all the presentations and slides and material that we've created on Canva for all the workshops that we did before, such as Tendy's workshop on hospitality. Um, Deba's given workshops on content management before. I'm trying to remember. Deba, have you given a no? Yes. Toilet break. Okay. All right. But there is quite a bit of material in Canva, and it is helpful for mentorship too, right? It sort of tells people, where they can find help. We have that. We have our YouTube channel. We have even like the paid subscriptions, right? We have the entire archive of what's on paper, like all the all hands. Um, everything that we have on paper is documented communication. Um, what else do we have that's actually pretty good material for mentorship, for training? Yeah, okay, that's that. Then we have, let's say, a live communication, right? Okay, so live communication can be like a one-on-one. You sit down with somebody and you say, "Hey, look, this thing is going really well this month. This thing is not going really this one," and you have a dialogue, you have a conversation about it. What else is also something that is live communication that we can use? Let's go to Tendi.
One on one. Um,
Whereby bisa.
yes, I think the the good one is meet face to face, sir.
Okay, great.
Sit down together.
Meeting face to face is a one-on-one, right? Like we're talking
Yeah,
about something.
one on
But
one.
there's also other variations of that. Other ways that we can meet one-on-one, besides let's say talking about like performance and whatnot. There's other habits and communication forms that we can do. Does anybody have any ideas how we could do that?
Whereby
Whereby.
Sure. Okay. But whereby is just the medium, right? It's just where we're going to have this thing. It's another. It's kind of like a tradition that we've had here at the company.
Guild.
Right. Okay. Very good. That's a way of actually mentoring. Yeah. There's let's say group participation. So inviting a mentee to participate in a group in a guild, like how you guys are here today, right? That is a form of live communication, and that works. Let's go to Deba. Deba, if you wanted to mentor somebody on content, let's say for photo editing or for photography, what do you think is the fastest way to ramp up their skill sets?
Just by doing, sir, by doing and evaluating. Yeah.
Very good. So Tenny must remember the idea when we first started, this idea of pairing, right? So we would work alongside the person that we're trying to coach so that they could see what we're doing and then we practice, right? I think Risky, I see you sometimes doing this with Alvin too. It's a pretty effective way. In fact, a lot of the tables and a lot of the hardware we set up at the base are meant for pairing. That's why we have two monitors on one table. The idea behind that was so that the mentor would be able to show the mentee what to do, and then the mentee would do it, and then they would reverse roles, right? So that there's always this driver and a navigator to see if the driver is going the right way. So that's also a pretty effective practice. Okay, what other are some other tools or ways that we can live communicate and mentor people?
workshop.
Yes, workshops, right. So workshops are good, and workshops are good because it's a demo. I just did a workshop today on infused water on the Jogja base. So remember, in a workshop, who should be doing most of the work?
The attendees.
Yes, the attendees. Like the way when we had the batik workshop or the, I guess the wine tasting workshop, right? So the attendees need to participate in order to actually get that crossover. Okay, um, let's talk about the KPIs then. How do we measure the effectiveness of this material? How do we measure the effectiveness of, let's say, the content that we're about to deliver to a person that we're coaching? Ooh, good question, right? I don't really know the answer. All right, let's go around and see if anybody else can help. Alvin, what do you think it is?
It's kind of a bit overlap with the timing actually.
Kind of,
If I
right?
think about,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like an overall package. But remember, we want to focus. We don't want to kind of run around and do all this stuff and have archives full of information and we never use it, right? So, how do we, let's say, get the most out of this material?
mm, the one that come in my mind is basically the SLAs, the result of the SLA itself.
Okay,
But it's kind of overlap with the timing, to be honest.
true, because we're looking at a human result, right? Okay, let's go over to Deba. Deba, what do you think? This is a form of content, right? So, how do we determine the effectiveness of the material?
Can I see the list of the
Yes,
materials?
absolutely. Here we go.
Okay, so for standards of like SLA, we have KPI, like a company KPI to measure that already, right?
Yep.
And for documented communication, the effectiveness, want to measure the effectiveness.
The reducing of the communication,
Ah,
other like application.
very good. Okay, interesting. Reducing communication time, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, Alvin. So that's high context, low signaling, right? Okay. I would give that credit. Deba, what do you think about that?
Mm, yeah.
Okay. Obviously, if we can actually be more effective mentors, I think. Think of the author. I love to think of it that way. Think of a person like Simon Sinek or somebody. I know. Yeah, he's
I I hate Simon Sinek.
okay. Fine. But regardless, he's mentored a lot of people, right? he's kind of like reached out and been able to affect. This is where Debo lost interest in this entire discussion. But okay, use whatever example, whatever person that you subscribe to, right? And think about, wow, that's actually pretty effective. They didn't need to do one-on-one with a lot of people. They were able to just like write a book, produce a video, people watched it, and then it sort of carried their message forward, and they hopefully were changed afterwards, right? So the idea is actually really good content should actually save you time. If you can just say, "Hey, read this or experience this by watching it," it saves you time as a mentor and it expands your message. Okay, so I'll count that as credit. Welcome back, Debo. All right, what else? What else would be a dimension of understanding, let's say, the effectiveness of the material?
Understanding ya. Uh,
Understanding and maybe progression, right? So this is related back to what Alvin was saying, like in the timing. Do they pass reviews on, let's say, do they become PCC, right? How quickly can someone become PCC?
That will be overlapping with the timing.
Okay, let's go over to Alvin. Alvin, what was that?
It's kind of overlapping with timing. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. But the benefit now is the efficiency, right? So I guess it should be seen as like maybe a stack for efficiency. So if, let's say, a candidate can come in, and for you as a mentor, you can spend, let's say, maybe 10% of your time here, but they can learn 90% of the material through this, then you can mentor more people, and you can mentor more happily, right? You don't have to train everybody from like ground up all the way each time. Okay. Um, the end result should be there, but the materials I think just save us some time. Okay, Alvin and I'm sorry, Risky and Tendi. What do you think about this? What is the metric of successful material?
um, how much how many PCE that the mentee can make
Very good.
from the material.
Interesting. Okay, so that's good actually. PCE is that's hard. Yeah, that might be outside of the control of just the material. The material I think is kind of like school, right? Like you could expect the material to bring up somebody to competency level, they know it, but for excellence, I think they would need to have, let's say, more practice and such. But okay, all right, if they could actually, let's say, evolve and create more PCE work, that would definitely mean that they understood everything beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and make new idea or new innovation from the current material.
Very good. Okay. I like that. I like this idea of actually this. If the material is really good, it should produce PCE and it should produce LE results, right? So instead of like saying, all right, um, I'm gonna teach you everything, right? It's like everything that will get you to this promotion is already there. You just need to digest it and understand it, and this should bring you to a level where you can start creating your own designs and your own influences. Okay, um, okay, so we have kind of like an idea around this. Let's talk about persona. Um, all right, this one's a little tricky, like I said, because it depends a bit on visibility, which might or might not be there. What is the influence? What kind of controls do we have on persona? Let's go to Risky. Risky, you came up with this one.
Um,
Persona kayak aku persona.
maybe it's like when the mentee need to ask a question or need help from us, we just respond and be there, just be there, just if you,
Okay. So your availability. Okay.
Yeah.
Core value.
Core value. Oh, right. All right. Okay. Core value adherence.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Let's talk about that. Can you control your availability?
Oh yes.
Again,
All right. Let's talk to
Are you
Diva.
sure?
I'd like to debate you on that one. Diva, can you control your availability?
availability. Don't know, man. Day by day, I feel like my time isn't really my time anymore.
All right. Alvin, you laugh too. Alvin, what do you think about availability?
Doing our best.
Okay, right. This is actually more to do with timing than availability. Risky. I think in terms of availability, as you can probably think about it, like as we get more and more busy, our availability becomes less and less, right? Because more of our time is now structured time, such as like if you weren't here, you could be available to process a mentee request, right? But now since you're at the leadership guild and it's structured, then your availability also becomes a little bit less less out there. So on availability, you can control, but it needs to be communicated. Um, when I was in college, professors used to have this great system for availability. It was called office hours, right? So they would essentially say, "I have office hours from 2 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and if you're interested, you can come into my office and ask me any question you want about any homework, about any test, about anything like this, right?" And that is kind of an interesting way to control availability. Not too many students showed up, so I would have to ask whether or not that's effective. But would that actually be helpful for controlling availability? Let's go to Alvin. Do you think that would be good? Like my mentor hours are between this and this, and if you have, let's say, a question, please ask within these times. Or uh, how should we control availability?
Yeah. I read this on LinkedIn just a few days ago about the time block itself, right? For the employee and also the open door policy, something like that. I think we can do that, but I don't know if it's actually really aligned with the process of persona itself.
Interesting. Okay, why?
Uh, this is based on what we discussed previously about persona, right? Persona is basically more on the setting of exam. Yeah, set an example, right? If we just putting focus on that, that basically kind of overlapping with timing itself.
All right.
Set an example for me. If we talk about also the KPI itself, it's about the process of from the how about the mentee move from LI to LC itself, because someone that actually replace us as the someone that we a mentor previously.
All right.
So basically, it's more about the process of not just about the process of our availability, but about the process of on the soft skill itself or the mindset. How actually we gotta measure the growth
Got
mindset
it.
itself from the mentee.
Got it. Okay, so it's something maybe we're not expecting the mentee to copy us. We're expecting to actually like it's back to the corn analogy. We're not going to become the corn. We don't, or maybe it's more like a circus, right? So maybe I'm not the bearded lady, but I want the bearded lady to become the best version of the bearded lady. Or maybe I'm not the acrobat, but I want the acrobat to become the best version of the acrobat. So in that way, maybe actually I don't want everyone copying my persona in that case, right? Like it's not like be like me, but more like be like the best version of you. Opens up an interesting topic. All right, let's go back to risky about that. So, do you think that, let's say, persona is an effective control now? Because we've brought up this idea that maybe maybe everybody shouldn't be like the leader. Maybe people should just be like the best version of themselves.
Actually, my point in the first place is I'm not saying that you have to be there in terms of presence, sir. I mean, it's like um, even though you're working or even though you're there, I mean, if the mentee need your help or needed to ask a question, you gotta be there. I mean, you gotta be there to answer.
Okay, support, right?
Reliable,
Timing,
reliable. Yeah.
timing. Yes.
It's more like a reliable sir,
Which
for the mentee.
good timing.
Yeah. You can say that.
Okay, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to simplify this. Reliability is something that's, let's say, difficult to measure, right? How to, but timing is much easier. So it means that, like, let's say, for example, when somebody reaches out for help, you offer help exactly when it's needed. You have good timing, right? Or if you have bad timing, you always offer help when none is required. So you have bad timing. Does that make sense?
If you see it from that way, yeah.
Okay, good. Once again, the whole point of having controls is this. We won't have time to cover everything, but let me show you what we discovered with recruiting. Sorry to switch topic again, and that was really helpful for us to actually understand when things don't go our way. Okay, so this is what I want to show you guys. Okay, so let's say, for example, in recruiting, if a candidate doesn't follow up, like let's say, for example, we call them, they don't call us back, or we offer them a job and they don't accept, we really have no control whether that happens or not. That is completely the candidate's decision, what they want to do. But the expectation is actually kind of interesting because the first thing is you shouldn't worry too much about that. There's nothing really that you can do if a candidate doesn't call you back. But what can you do? You can focus back on your controls. You can focus back on the things that you can make impact on and think about how you would improve there. So if a candidate does not call you back or leaves you hanging, you should ask yourself the question, have you attracted the right candidate? Have you really get them really interested about working at Bukit Vista, right? If they're not persuaded and they are not seduced by this idea, then they might not follow through, or maybe they're not attracted enough, but their intimidation is pretty high. What we found out recently was that a lot of people were they were intimidated to apply to Bukit Vista. They were like, "Oh, everyone speaks English there. They look like they're so fast moving. I probably wouldn't survive." And so we need to think about how we become more attractive. We need to think about how we improve our timing. So maybe the timing isn't ideal, and it's taken maybe too long between each engagement with the candidate. So they don't think we're serious or whatever. It's not good timing. The inertia is too heavy. So work on your timing then, or maybe selection. Maybe the people that you've selected to interview are not serious or career minded. They're very casual. So that is something that you can go back to control. Okay, so let's say, for example, if the candidate doesn't accept the offer, once again, that's the candidate's choice. It's not your choice as a recruiter. So the solution is, once again, go back, work on your timing, work on your selection and attraction. And those are the parts that you can't control. So um, what I'm getting to here is this: the more simple you can make your controls, more effective you'll be as a mentor. Because let's just face it, we already said in the beginning 50% of people won't make it. So your job is essentially to kind of get better at that. Try to get a better intuition of selecting which 50% you want to work on so that you can work on the part that does make it, right. And think about like the key things that you can do to improve your chances of success. So reliability is related to timing, and that's related to also the success of your mentees as well, right. Okay, so what I like about this now is that we can simplify. We can kind of collapse persona back to timing, and the right timing then creates the right persona. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So let's see. We can do that, and then it's about selection. Okay. Remember, back to the idea that I just said. Um, Selection. The question you should always ask yourself too, as well, if a mentee didn't work out, is, like I said, we know that 50% of people probably won't work out. So then the question is, did you select the correct person? Were you able to distinguish the person who had the right fit with your mentor style? And that goes all the way back to the hiring process, right? If you've hired the right person, you'll find that about 80% of the work is already done. Um, if you've hired, let's say, a person that's really difficult, or you're choosing to mentor a person who's really difficult, you'll find it like you're doing 80% of all the work, right? So definitely the selection process is important. So how do we actually then gauge if we're successful, or what's the KPI for selection? Let's go over to Alvin. How do we create a KPI around selection?
DSS,
Okay,
basically the feedback itself, scoring using a score.
okay. All right. Let's go to Deba. Deba, what do you think is a good KPI for selection?
Wait, I got a lot of question here. So
Sure.
selection like a like candidate selection or like what selection?
Well, remember, if you are part of Bukit Vista, you have some say in whoever gets hired here, right? So that's part of your selection sort of process too. Um, and remember, back to that conversation we were having in the beginning, like I think a mentor-mentee relationship is something where you have to be selective. You have to say, okay, I want this person to be the person I train. I want this person to be the person I bring up. And of course you have selection. We don't make anybody work with anybody they don't want to work with here, right? So anybody has the right to veto a person that they go, ooh, I don't think this person's going to work. I don't want to actually be in charge of bringing this person up. So we definitely have, let's say, selection votes at this company. Whether or not we use them is another question, right? But we definitely have selection power. So that's what selection means.
Ah, selection. If you add measure selection, that would be like the like if HR have this KPI of pass interview to pass probation rate, then perhaps if like selection, meaning that you select these people to mentor them in particular apa namanya skill set or like a particular roles, right? Like it could be within chapter or like within or maybe build their own sub chapter. So maybe the time maybe the KPI is like the time when they come up with the specialization, maybe.
Okay, all right. So the KPI could be when they become specialized. So that would indicate probably process excellence or process competency.
More or less.
Okay, all right. Time to process excellence, right? Okay. Alvin, I would actually okay. Let's go around. Risky and Tendy. What do you think are the KPIs to selection? So if you're a mentor and you selected the correct people to mentee, to mentor, how would we how would we be able to, like, let's say, keep you accountable, or how would we be able to determine if your choice was good?
See uh, the progress that the something that they handle. For example, like the revenue management, and then I for example I choose the one in Chandra.
Uh-huh.
So I would like see the Chandra and the one progress, if that the revenue that they handle the area, is it increase or decline or something. So I will compare it, which one is better, so I can choose which person is for the future can handle.
Okay, very good. On revenue achievement, what else? Okay, let's go to Risky. Risky, what else do you think would be a good way to know if you've selected the right person?
I think we have to set the low boundaries and the high boundaries. Like, let's say if this, no, this is just one of the example. Let's say this person is staying in the company for 2 months. It's a low boundary, and then
Okay,
stay for a year. So it's a high boundary, so we can say that this we select the right guy,
Okay.
because he stick.
okay, all right. That's actually pretty good. So the tenure time could be a reflection of how well we selected a person. Um, there's also one, also Alvin. I would like to actually kind of counter the idea of the ESS, right? So I'll debate you on this one. I actually think that should be this should be the opposite of ESS. This should be like how much the mentor would want the same kind of mentee again, right? So if you selected well, then you would be happy to mentee somebody like this again, right? But if you selected not so well, you would agonize and you would say, "Oh, I don't want to mentor anybody like this again." So it's almost like a reverse score. It's like the score that you give to a mentee would be related to your selection capability. Imagine HR selected people for you, right? We said, hey, look, I want you to mentee this person. You go like, no, no, I don't want to do this person. They're terrible. We say, no, you're going to do this because this is HR's decision. And then this person is horrible. Then the SLA to HR would be like, hey, you need to give me people I'm happier with to mentor next time. Otherwise, I don't approve of HR's work. So But if we come to select ourselves, if we select our own people, then that SLA has to be internal. Then it has to be okay. If I picked somebody and I would not pick them again, then that is an indication that my selection was not so good. So it's almost like a mentor satisfaction survey rather than an employee satisfaction survey. What do you think of that?
I kind of get the idea itself, but something kind of bugging me. I don't know. Uh, Something kind of not right from my side actually, but I don't know what else. But I get the idea, and I actually pretty much agree with that. But I don't know. I feel something is kind of a bit
Because
not weird.
the other variables is actually related to the candidate. This variable is related to the mentor selection process, right? So this one is the only one that is. All the other ones keep the mentor accountable. This one keeps more the mentee accountable. And remember, there has to be some balance in any relationship. So like if you're unhappy in your marriage, why? Right? Why are you unhappy in your marriage? Is it all your fault? Maybe. Is it all your partner's fault? Could be, but ultimately you're responsible for your decision. So if you decided to marry something you're unhappy with, then you could kind of go back to the beginning and say, why? Well, why did I pick this person? Right? So um, it's sort of it keeps your own choice at an accountable status. Okay, more discussions about this. I think this is an interesting topic. Okay, let's go around. 1 to 5, Diba. How interesting is this topic to you? Three. Okay. All right. What would make this more interesting for you? Can anybody hear Diba? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, Diba, try reloading. Yeah, when you come back. Oh, now okay. Now I can hear you. I think.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Temace dicoba.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably more into the how because we're discussing like what is it like and what the KPI measure, but like how to reach is like I think it's the biggest obstacle for each mentor. So
Okay. All right. So more practical, more the uh, how we put this into daily practice, right?
yes, exactly.
Okay. Well put. I think this is also important as leaders because part of, let's say, what leadership is turning something abstract into something at least more concrete. The takeaway I was hoping that, let's say, everyone walks away with is how to take like things that are abstract, like how do I do this thing, and make it into something that like you feel like you have more control over. So mentorship is something really abstract. It's almost like love or relationships, but if you can kind of focus on where your controls are and then how you can measure your controls, then that's the first step such that it starts creating order around all the activity that you do. It starts giving a sort of a format and a framework to the activity, and it makes it cumulative rather than just sort of like starburst. Okay, Alvin, how relevant is this topic to you from 1 to 5?
In general, from the start, right?
Yeah.
For now, still 3.5
Okay.
because we kind of still, just like Diba, I prefer for a practical, but basically we're still scratching around on the definition and also the KPI itself.
Okay.
But if we actually are doing this on the SLA, I think it will be much more interesting for me.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we need to digest this a little bit more until it's
Yeah.
more refined. Okay. Good. But this is what leadership is.
Actually, just you remind me of something. Your line just remind me of something. This is we admit that this is something abstract. Like, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
We admit that this is something abstract, but uh, the measurement that we have in the company to like measure mentorship is actually not abstract. It's numbers.
Yes.
So that is what actually interesting, right? So is this number fake or like is there any or there a 3 4 A a 3 4 person A is different from like 3 or 4 person B. Like let's say me and often give 3, but maybe the Y's is different. and then you need to ask why, right? I mean,
Right.
like, so yeah.
Well, part of it also, Deba, is we need to ask why as mentors, but we also need to know what we need to focus on too, right? And this is the sort of the wraparound on this. If we get, let's say for mentorship, and this is my point. I'm trying to get everybody's mentorship scores up, right? So if we don't know what to focus on, or if we, let's say, don't focus on the right things, or we just we ask people the why, but it's not something that we can change, right? Then we feel powerless at the end of the day. We go, well, this seems like something I don't have any control over, and that's what I don't want anybody to feel, because it is something that is pretty abstract. Um, but let's say, for example, you went to one of your mentees and they said, why? Oh, it's like they say, you don't spend enough time with me, right? I feel like I'm not getting whatever, right? And you have to go back to think about, can I control that? Can I actually spend all day with you? Is that something that's a reasonable request? And then you go back to your tools. You go back to, okay, I can't spend time with you in the way that you need it, but I've actually written all this material, and I've put my best thoughts here. Perhaps you can read it and then come back to me and let me know what you think, right? And we can spend 10 minutes discussing about how you can get better at that. So I think part of being good at anything is, once again, back to the serenity prayer. Hopefully, what is it that you can control? What is it that you can't control? And how do you tell the difference between something you can control and something you can't control? This is the after the why part. So after you ask your mentee, what can I do to become a better mentor for you? Then you need to be able to filter it out. You can say, yes, I have control over these things. No, I have no control over these things. And these are my resources that I can utilize to help you become better, and this is my goal. And then I think you have the next step then, right? After the why, after the what can we do to improve? Good point though, Diva. Yeah, that's relevant. I thought about how to integrate this in. Is that a good explanation, Diva?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Not. Looks like that you're not entirely convinced. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. Then we need to close this up. So, okay, Risky and Tendi, what do you think about this? How relevant is this to you, and how can we make it better?
I'm for.
Okay, and how can we make this better? What would make this, let's say, more useful for your life?
Uh, I'm interested like the relationship on team.
Okay,
Yeah,
relationship in a team. Okay,
yeah,
so more like leadership and team
um,
mentorship.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, if like your goal, how to increase the number or the score of the mentorship and leadership, I think it's about the visibility and then the relationship with other teams, because the employee satisfaction is for all team, and then give number to one person, right?
true.
So if that person didn't have like any relation or didn't communication, they will just give 3 or 2 or
That
so.
is a really good insight. Actually,
If,
that's a good
if you
point.
if you have yeah, maybe they don't know what you're working on or something, so they just like give it. But if you step up in the like operational and then you help almost all people you help, maybe they will give up score because you have the relation.
Interesting. All right, that's a really good insight, Tendi. I didn't think about that. Tell
Yeah.
that to Wayana. She's been asking about that, so that's a good one. And I think we were discussing that with Deba and Nung Lee too, about whether or not to selectively give mentorship scores. But okay, that's a good point. That is a really good point. Let's go to Risky. Okay, how relevant is this to you, and what could be done better?
I think I'm gonna give it 4 too, sir. Actually, it's not that relevant for me since I'm not like leader yet. But it's a good help for me. I mean, like how to mentor.
Okay. Well, can't be a leader if you don't think you're a leader yet. So have to like convince yourself that you're. I think
Or am I?
everybody at this company is leading something. Even if you are an intern, you're given responsibility, and it's your responsibility to do it. And so that is effectively leading. Um, Following would mean like you always turn to other people. What do I do now? What do I do now? Right. So I think whatever dimension we work in, we are definitely the leaders in our own domain. Um, but where mentorship comes in is training other people how to lead, or even training other people how to, like, say, succeed you, training other people how to, like, be better. I've seen a lot of that here at this university, by the way. Sometimes I'm really shocked at how really good professors, they don't seem to actually know everything, but they know how to get everyone to share. They get everyone to talk. They get everyone to contribute. And so what happens is that it's kind of like a organizer, right? All the best bands come in, all the best sound people come in, all the talent comes in, but the organizer themselves might not be the best musician, the best engineer, the best whatever. They just were able to bring everyone there to have a great time. Okay, we've gone over time. Thank you very much for coming in today, and hope to see everyone again at the next Leadership Guild. And I think we can probably develop this. We can probably turn something that's like abstract like this into something more concrete. And what I really wanted to share was the process of how you take something abstract and you refine it, and pivot until it becomes something that's more concrete. And that hopefully can give you guys insights on how to create KPIs and SLAs for your own chapters too as well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jing.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.